In the opening scene, we are introduced to a woman named Nida Huck, who lives alone in a small apartment in the north of England. She works as a sales assistant at a store called Posset, specifically in the footwear section. She spends her day opening up the store, helping out customers and doing everything she can to be the best employee in her boss's view. However, she is often bullied by her fellow coworker, Vicky, who often makes her cut her lunch breaks short and deal with difficult, arrogant customers. One day, she is even asked to deal with a suspicious man named Keith Holligan, who is rumored to have killed his wife. In the midst of all this, the town is politically charged, and a conservative government is on the rise. Most of the population hates the immigrants, and wants them out of the country. It is then shown that the year is 1979, and a local leader named Michael Smart is trying to gain power. Nida also faces racism and alienation due to her Indian background. The people in the street give her suspicious side-eyed glances, while Vicky hates the fact that she eats Indian food. The combination of these negative experiences makes Nida harbor violent fantasies when she meets arrogant customers, but she never acts upon them. One day, at work, the manager, who seems to have been tipped by Vicky, asks Nida to eat her Indian lunch in the basement in order to avoid any potential smells. Nida innocently complies and heads to the basement during her lunch break. There, she stumbles upon a collection of old newspaper clippings detailing various tragic events. Among these clippings, she discovers a peculiar stone with an engraved symbol. When she proceeds to pick up the stone, she accidentally cuts her finger, smearing blood on it. Regardless, she secretly stuffs the stone in her pocket before leaving the basement. Later, back at her home, Nida takes the stone in her hand. To her astonishment, she hears a voice coming from the stone. The voice introduces itself as a demon named Gop, and reveals that the stone she is holding is a powerful talisman. The demon tells her that by inadvertently marking the talisman with her blood, Nida has become bound to a chilling obligation to carry out 3 human sacrifices, or else the world will meet its end. As expected, Nida doesn't believe all of this, but the next second, the demon takes on a terrifying physical form, scaring the life out of her. When she continues screaming, Gop transforms into Nida's favorite singer from the band Boney M. Nida is unable to believe her own eyes, but Gop goes on to say that they must execute 1 person per day in order to prevent the impending apocalypse. Overwhelmed and uncertain, Nida initially considers the entire situation to be a mere hallucination and tries to ignore the entity's demands. However, Gop removes her doubts by revealing a glimpse of a world in ruins with a simple snap of his fingers. Driven by panic, Nida storms out into the dark night and comes across a 39-year-old man named Tim Simons, who is walking his dog under a bridge. Gop, who follows her everywhere, urges her to make him her first sacrifice. When Nida hesitates, the demon claims that Tim is a bad person who preys on his own 12-year-old daughter. He even shows her a vision of that disgusting scenario. This is enough to persuade Nida, and filled with rage, she uses a brick to strike Tim on the head, killing him instantly. However, right after she commits the deed, she returns home and throws up. She is unable to sleep the whole night as the memory of what she has done weighs heavily on her mind. At one point, she even contemplates surrendering herself to the police, but Gop stops her, warning her that failing to complete the remaining 2 sacrifices will result in the apocalypse. The demon advises her to pretend as if everything is normal, so that she can avoid arousing suspicion from anyone. The next day, the police find Tim's lifeless body beneath the bridge and start an investigation. Meanwhile, Nida goes about her usual routine at work, pretending as if nothing has happened. Gop continues to follow her, persistently encouraging her to select her next victim. However, Nida ignores him and heads straight back home after work. When she spends the entire day without killing anyone, Gop warns her that failure to do so will trigger an apocalypse and even shows her news of a potential nuclear war between Russia and the US as evidence. This makes Nida realize that he is speaking the truth, so she selects a weapon of choice, which turns out to be a hammer. She then heads to the local bar for a drink, hoping it will give her some courage. At the bar, the 2 spot Keith, and Gop confirms that the man indeed killed his wife. This means that Keith is perfect for their next target. Meanwhile, the bartender and a barmaid notices something amiss about Nida as she appears to be talking to herself, unaware that she's communicating with Gop. A short while later, Nida follows Keith out of the bar and approaches him, who then invites her to his place. As soon as they arrive, Nida takes out the hammer from her bag and gets ready to kill him. But just then, a scared Keith confesses that he is a bad person, and that he feels guilty about everything he did. Despite this revelation, Nida, with only 6 minutes until midnight, strikes Keith in the head repeatedly until he dies. Later, as she is about to leave the house, Keith's brother, Chris, enters and notices Nida with her blood-stained jacket. In an attempt to erase all evidence, Nida ends up getting in a scuffle with Chris and stabs him fatally with a kitchen knife. Upon returning home, Nida is racked with guilt because this time, she killed an innocent person. Nonetheless, Gop insists she must move on from the incident as her assignment of killing 3 people is now fulfilled. But surprisingly, the talisman symbol still indicates that the apocalypse has not been averted. Perplexed, Gop contacts his higher authorities to inquire, only to learn that Keith's death does not count towards the ritual's completion because they can't kill murderers as part of the ritual. It means that Nida must still take one more life to fulfill her task. This infuriates Nida and she puts the blame on Gop, also claiming that she won't carry out any more murders. However, the demon admits that he wasn't aware of all this. Furthermore, he reveals that not completing the task would make him fail his initiation and be banished to oblivion forever. Hearing this, Nida empathizes with Gaepi's situation, feeling a connection as an immigrant who struggles to find a sense of belonging, particularly after her mother's passing. Hence, she reluctantly agrees to undertake her final task, and together, they seek to determine their last victim. While at work the next day, Nida and Gop plan to target Vicky, who consistently mistreats her. Just then, Tim's grieving wife and daughter walk into the store to buy a pair of funeral shoes. While serving them, Nida feels very bad for the little girl, but Gop consoles her, saying that her actions have saved Tim's daughter from a future of misery. Later on, as Gop is pushing Nida to choose between killing Vicky and her boss, the local political leader, Michael Smart, enters. Following this, the boss calls out Vicky as the best employee and asks her to serve Michael. As the two talk, Nida learns that Michael is a racist individual who absolutely hates immigrants. He promises to remove all of them from the country once he comes into power. Enraged, Nida changes her target to Michael and asks Gop to show her his future. As he does, Nida learns that Michael will be creating a complete destruction of the world by declaring war in the future. Gop pleads with her to select a different target, claiming that his superiors won't be happy with the sacrifice of Michael, but Nida has already made up her mind. She then leaves the store, taking a red leather jacket she had been eyeing for a long time. On the other hand, a team of police officers led by Len Fisher is investigating the initial murder. As they struggle to solve the first case, they come across the deceased bodies of Keith and Chris. Upon investigating further, they learn that Keith was at a local bar the previous night, prompting them to head towards the same. The bartender tells them that he saw an Indian girl acting weirdly, referring to Nida. In addition, the barmaid also discloses that Nida drank 2 glasses of alcohol alone, and on top of that, she was muttering to herself. Later in the evening, Len visits Nida's residence to conduct a formal inquiry. He questions her about Keith and whether she saw him at the bar the night before. Cleverly, Nida pretends that she does not know Keith and has never heard of that name before. With this response, she manages to dismiss the police officer. After Len leaves the house, she goes back to Gop and continues planning Michael's murder. A few hours before midnight, Nida and Gop drive to the town hall where Michael is giving a speech and wait for him outside. Unbeknownst to them, Len, who is still suspicious of Nida, follows her to the town hall. As Michael walks out of the hall and starts driving away, Nida pursues him. While pursuing Michael's car, she notices Len through her mirror, but she manages to shake him off her tail when they pass through a closing railway crossing. After a while of car chase, Nida hits Michael's car, causing him to lose control and skidding him off the road before hitting a tree. Although injured, Michael survives the accident. Seeing this, Nida retrieves her hammer from her car and walks towards Michael with the intention of killing him. However, before she can do so, Len arrives at the scene and intervenes, preventing her from carrying out the gruesome act. After this, Nida is handcuffed and taken into custody. At the police station, Nida confesses everything, including the existence of the demon, Gop, and the dire consequences she was told would occur if she didn't fulfill the killings. She explains how she believed that not carrying out the murders would trigger a nuclear war, causing global devastation. However, this only makes her look like she is mentally unstable. As the minutes count down and the clock strikes midnight, an eerie silence envelops the surroundings for a brief moment. Suddenly, the air raid sirens outside begin to blare, prompting all the officers to rush out to investigate. To their utter shock, they discover that Nida's grim prediction has come true: the world is under nuclear attack. Meanwhile, Gop appears before Nida once again. Now that they are unable to complete the sacrifice, the demon will be banished in eternal oblivion. As a result, Gop offers her to accompany him in eternal oblivion, which Nida agrees after a while of deliberation. In the final scene, Gop and Nida exchange glances, as they walk away together while the world burns behind them.